If you're looking for visionary conversations that push the boundaries of everything you thought you knew, welcome to Conversations Beyond the Cutting Edge, where every month, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer invites two leading authorities from distinctly different fields to engage in a deep dialogue focusing on the latest discoveries, information, and insights on some of today's most provocative metaphysical topics. Here's your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello and welcome to part 2 of this special inaugural edition of Conversations Beyond the Cutting Edge. Joining me today to continue their riveting conversation on astrology, cosmology, the digitization of time, the cosmic coming eclipse, our cosmic citizenship, and the new humans and much more, our acclaimed astrologer and author Pam Gregory and cosmologist, planetary healer, futurist, author and co-founder of wholeworldview.org, Jude Currivan, PhD. Jude, Pam, welcome back.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Jude, if I can start with you, we touched on this in episode 1, but in the short interval between recording that show and this show, we've not only heard of, but I've personally experienced an acceleration of multidimensional phenomena, psychic sensitivity, telepathy, overlapping dreams, all kinds of things. So we truly are in the thick of this whole incredible world that we're transitioning into, aren't we?
We are indeed. And what I'm really loving, and this was part of our conversation last time, is that the emergent science is a science of unity, is not the old paradigm of separation and materiality. And this emerging science has space because it has space. What I'm really saying is that, it's revealing a universe that meaningfully exists and purposefully evolves as a unitive, multidimensional entity where mind and consciousness aren't what we have, but literally what we and the whole world are. So in this understanding that's convergent with universal wisdom teachings, such as astrology, that multidimensionality, that sort of expansion of our awareness is actually a natural aspect of, I would suggest, of our conscious evolution.
What really hit me that I took from the previous episode, and we all know this and we've heard it lots of times, but it really sunk in this time, was the fact that it is all intermingled. We, the planets, the universe, we're all evolving at exactly the same time. And one can't say, well, this triggered that and this triggered that. It is a co-creative, continuing, evolution.
It's literally that we stand on the bow wave of space-time. We stand on the bow wave of the here and the now of a universe that's been journeying to this point for 13.8 billion years. This incredible evolutionary journey from simplicity to ever greater levels of complexity and individuated self-awareness, all as a unitive whole. And so, yes, the whole universe is journeying and into ever greater potential of its own conscious evolution. So for me, and I know for Pam too, and Sandie yourself, I think this is an invitation of the universe now to us. It's an invitation I would suggest to wake up, remember who we really are, and also understand what we can evolve to become. And so all of those multidimensional phenomena you mentioned, at the very simplest, our intuition is, to me, our superpower. Mm-hmm. We all have it. It's a natural aspect of who we are. And it is non-local in the sense that it is not limited by the sort of the signaling within space-time. We are part of this whole universe. And therefore we can access that sentience at all those different levels of awareness if we're just willing to open ourselves up to those possibilities, those realities, and our place within them.
And isn't it wonderful and absolutely perfect that we have people like Pam who study the planets, study astrology, and can interpret for us what that actually means, for us on a day-to-day level?
Well, absolutely. And I, you know, I'm also a sort of nothing like the expertise that Pam has. But, you know, naturally for me as a naturally for me as a cosmologist, astrology is that sort of sentience, our universal sentience playing out at the scale of our solar system, our solar family, as I describe it, with a U in it, so SOULAR. So there's that natural, influential interdependence. And what Pam has done is spend a lifetime understanding the profound archetypal wisdom for us. And yet, as I'm sure Pam would also say, you know, it is a lifetime that you've spent this. So you are a maestro, but it's rather like gardening. It's something we can all learn to some degree, and that has benefit on our own lives. We have the fortune of being guided by incredible astrologers such as Pam. But it is a language. It is a you know, a way of looking at ourselves and the world that benefits each of us, and we can all learn it to some degree or other, depending on our wish to do so. I personally really enjoy being guided by Pam.
Oh, bless you. That's a huge honour, Jude. Huge honour.
And so do millions of others. And Pam, you know, I think you once said something like, you know, studying astrology, what? And I had the same thing when I started studying it back in 1976, just as an amateur. Look where we've come. I mean, now we are really beginning to see what astrology can offer us.
Yes, and you know what I'm trying to do, and I think many astrologers are trying to do, is go beyond the planets do things to us in a fated, scary way, and rather see them as psychic archetypes for evolution. See them as the modeling clay, you know, turn it all around. So we're looking at it as a process of empowerment when we understand astrology, rather than I'm a victim of whatever the planets are going to do to me today. So I think that's quite important. And I was very excited by something that Jude said in one of our conversations. I don't know if it was online or offline, that, you know, this is the greatest evolutionary opportunity we've ever had. And that is so immensely exciting, because it's confirmed by the astrology in many different ways that this is a key time of endings and beginnings of the processional cycle and the Kali Yuga. And, you know, there are many different levels. It's almost fractal. There are many different levels that are suggesting this. And actually, coming up in April 2024, we have another potential very big jump in our consciousness and our understanding, with a conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus on the 20th of April. And that's kind of enmeshed, blended with the energy of the total solar eclipse on the 8th of April. So these are big, energetic astrological opportunities to really jump us, awaken us, jump us to a higher state of being. And I love the way Jude talks about this, but also to remind us that we are one consciousness. We've been so kind of encouraged, let us say, into this sense of separation and division. So whether you're talking about, you know, religion or nationality or whatever it is, that, you know, there's a blue and a red or a black and a white or whatever, but actually we are one humanity. And I think as we expand our consciousness into this greater sense of our own multidimensionality and come back into touch with with our galactic heritage, our galactic lineage and family, which I know is something Jude has written about in her wonderful book on Gaia, all of those divisions between humanity seem ridiculous, like spats over the back garden fence, because we realize we are one humanity operating together as one consciousness. And as I say, I just think that's immensely empowering. And when I look at a birth chart, it's so bizarre because, and it's so exciting because in the same moment, I'm looking at a map of the heavens for the moment of their birth, but at the same time, I'm looking at their psyche, a map of their soul, a geometry of their soul, if you like. It's an inner and an outer, this hermetic principle of the inner, the outer, the microcosm, and the macrocosm. And so I think once we start to grasp these fundamentals that astrology is based on, it can take us a long way in our consciousness. You know, for instance, if I'm meeting with a client, I don't do client work anymore, but when I did, I didn't know what they were experiencing, but I could understand the archetypes, and whatever they were experiencing was inevitably reflected in those archetypes. So once you can help the client to understand that this is coming from inside them. It isn't just the universe giving them a jolly hard time that day, although today might be quite a challenging day with my cesspit, I have to say. Nevertheless, it is coming from within us. And that's how I know I can understand the archetype that they are being presented with in the world, but it's actually coming from them. And this is Carl Jung's work, because he was a prolific astrologer, as you may know. So once you understand it's actually coming from within you, then not only does that help to shift your consciousness, but it gives you the power to do something about it, to start to be a co-creator within your own reality, rather than just, I'm a victim to whatever is unfolding at the time.
I think that's such a powerful way of looking at it. I'd go even perhaps a step beyond that, and to say it's both inner and outer, because, we are all microcosmic co-creators of this amazing, vast, wondrous universe. So in that sense, and we're all part of its sentience, its consciousness. So as you're saying, Pam, we're none of us separate, we're inseparable, but we are differentiated. I mean, one of the wonders of our universe is this journey of nearly 14 billion years, from the simplest of atoms to the most complex of individuated biological life forms. I mean, each of us is a community of 37 trillion cells, and each of us, in a way, is a cell of the body of our universe. So the family of our solar family, those archetypes, and I love that Jung was an astrologer, and many, many others that we, aren't perhaps well known to have really respected astrology as an incredible wisdom teacher, have nonetheless done so. I mean, Newton was an astrologer.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so there are many of us, and I think this is now, because of this emergent understanding of an innately meaningful, purposeful, existing, evolving, unitive universe of consciousness. It has its natural place. And it has its natural place, not just for us each on our individuated levels, but I know, as you're very interested, I'm particularly interested in now, having done many, many charts with many folks over many years, appreciating, as you mentioned, how the sort of the fractal nature of an individuated, both consciousness and astrology, then scales up. So I look at the sort of the astrology of nations and astrology of groups and families and collectively the astrology of humanity. So I'm loving to hear what you're going to say while we're together today in terms of this particular time, because it is so pivotal for each of us, but for all of us over these coming weeks and months and years ahead.
Yeah, and I think astrology will become more high profile again because of the Aquarian energy, because it's ruled by Uranus, which is the planet linked to astrology. So I think it will find its place, because as we know, in thousands of years of history, up until about the Middle Ages, it was revered. It was part of university curriculum. It was part of the mystery schools. You couldn't be a doctor in the Middle Ages if you didn't understand astrology, with the four humors, as they were called. And then it sort of fell into disrepute of kind of backstreet readings and farmers' almanacs and that kind of thing. But now I think it's going to start to find its place as we start to understand our own consciousness much more fully. And this whole idea of it being, the universe being fractal, the cosmos being fractal, I think is just absolutely so exciting. It's like source or divine intelligence or God, or whatever you want to do it, sends out a particular evolutionary impulse, which is created at many different levels of being, whether it's the Kordy-Lusky clouds or a slug or a snail or humanity or whatever. It's fractal. And everything seems to obey, and Jude's the real expert in this, but everything seems to obey that kind of fractal symmetry. So it's like a thought of God or a thought of divine intelligence that's expressed. Let's try creativity in this area, but it expresses us at every level of fractality. And that leads you, like Russian dolls, into a kind of infinity, and then it kind of falls out of my ears. And have to go and have a cold shower. But yes, I mean, that's, it's very exciting what we're living through at the moment, because it feels like such an accelerated transition, and really this expansion of consciousness into our multidimensionality is happening so fast, as you say, Sandie. People experiencing that, sharing the same dreams,
Yes,
much more telepathy, much more of a sense of oneness, connecting to all living beings. I mean, I've mentioned a couple of times in recent videos, I feel we're all almost going back to Lemurian frequency. And I don't know how you feel about this, either of you, Jude or Sandie, but there's this feeling of connecting to all living beings. We are just merging as one. And that's why I keep encouraging people to get to the state of consciousness where it is completely unthinkable to hurt another living being. It's just not, and that's how we'd end the wars, and the disputes. And so that's where we've got to get to.
Yeah, agree. I wrote a piece a while ago called "From Pieces to Peace," and we were, I think, talking about this last time. We have a dis-ease of separation at the moment. Yeah. And if we look through the world through a lens of separation, we have conflicts, we have inequalities, we have extraction, we have all that we have. But when we turn round and literally heal our vision and see the world through that lens of wholeness, then peace is the natural outcome.
Yes.
And so I agree. I mean, one of the things we're talking about as well is really bringing all that we are through our human experience, but at an evolved level. And so normalizing, as you said, Pam, and I know Sandie, you talk a great deal about this, is this lived experience of wholeness. So it's not just understanding this, it's experiencing and embodying it in our everyday lives. And that's what I think all three of us are speaking to as the opportunity of these times.
And it looks like chaos, but as you've pointed out, in chaotic times, we have the biggest potential, the greatest potential to make quantum leaps.
Absolutely. That's the story of Gaia. That's the story of the universe. When things are sort of very on an even keel, evolution tends to move slowly. When things are a bit more rocky, it moves more quickly. When things are unsustainable from whatever reason, then it can move incredibly quickly. We can literally wait. It's rather like being in a deep sleep. We've been in a dream, but the dreams turn to a nightmare, it seems to me. So we literally are waking up from it. The universe is shaking us awake, shaking us awake. And it's not so much, it's not despite all of this unsustainability and this turbulence. It's because of it. But we can no longer be asleep in this illusion of separation.
No, and we have to acknowledge we are part of it. Whatever chaos is occurring,
of course,
contributed.
Yeah, and we're not going to do that again. And I think Neptune moving into the very final degrees of Pisces over the next year, February 2026, it moves sort of almost holding hands with Saturn into 0 degrees of Aries. You could look at one side of Pisces as being the veil, the illusion, the dream that's turned into a nightmare, the thing that isn't quite real, but we've believed it's been real, the veil. And I think as Neptune starts to move out of the end of Pisces next year, but fully in 2026, that veil, whatever that's represented for us, that illusion is going to dissolve. And we again step into our own spiritual leadership with Saturn and Neptune holding hands at 0 of Aries. We become our own spiritual leaders.
And I love, sorry, Pam.
No, finished. Yep.
I love that, because we were talking last time, I think, again, we're having such wonderful conversations. I tend to forget whether we're online or offline, but we have them. But we were talking about, and you mentioned it now, that the sort of the archetypes, the astrological archetypes themselves are evolving. And with some work that I've been involved with the last couple of years, the evolution of Saturn has been from that sort of structural master of time, still master of time, but actually moving in service to all life, going through this evolutionary progress. And so for Saturn to be holding hands with Neptune, it seems to be such a wonderful relationship that is guiding us into this opening and this clarity and this perspective. Of course, in Aries, it's for each of us.
Yes.
And yet it's for all of us. And I love that it's not just even Saturn and Neptune going through this, but all the sort of social and outer planets, they're all changing signs. This is the absolute cusp, threshold of the changing of a major epoch at a moment that literally is inviting us and calling us and to wake up to this and be consciously co-creative evolutionary partners through this whole evolutionary arc.
So the astrology books have to be rewritten for future students.
I mean, I think they're starting to be, particularly with the discovery of the dwarf planets. Because until recently, until really kind of the turn of the century, we didn't know they were out there. They've been there forever, thousands and maybe millions of years. Jude will know better than I do. But it's only because we've been able to raise our consciousness sufficiently. We've been able to observe them, start to name them, understand their mythology, their archetype. And that's a big jump in itself. So in so many areas of life, people are suddenly starting to see things that were always there, but our consciousness was too limited to see them before. And this is, happening in many areas of life, which is immensely exciting. So new books are being written about the Kuiper Belt objects, which are, they're being discovered all the time and named all the time. And luckily, we've got a very good astronomer in Mike Brown in Arizona, who's, I think he's in Arizona, who's discovered many of them. And he's very well versed in mythology. So he can help the astrologers along with, with this strange synchronicity of the name he gives them turns out to be how they play out in people's charts. So all of this is expanding our consciousness. But I think the more we can trust and jump willingly on the surfboard, as opposed to resist this fast change, the better we'll handle it. Even though you've never surfed before, let's say, and you're surfing some really big waves now, much better that than not going into the sea. Try and welcome it in. There's no rehearsal. We're in the crucible of change, but try and welcome it rather than resist it, I think is some simple advice I'd suggest, because we're in it right now. And whether you look at the solar flares, the solar peak of solar cycle 25 that we're going through right now, all the photonic light that we're experiencing, whichever way you look at it, the outer planets all changing sign from now till 2026. Some of the dwarf planets are also changing sign. They have much slower orbits, around about 300 years. Whichever way you cut the cake or look at the fractality, this is a major accelerated time of change, and we have to welcome it, however physically discombobulating it may feel at times.
There's two things I'd like to say in response to what you just said. One is, you're talking about Mike Brown. Now, for those of us, let's just say, on the ground, trying to make sense of all of this, what you said, it's a perfect demonstration. He names these planets. That is a demonstration of intuition right there, of connectedness, that he is able to name these planets, and then we discover the qualities. I mean, that's brilliant. And that's what we're all going to be able to do, things like that.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I just would go back to what Pam was saying as well. I see this as an incredibly benevolent time. I don't see it as you're saying, you were saying, let's welcome this. I think we should welcome it, because this is the evolutionary impulse of our entire universe flowing through us. I mean, we were talking, I think, the other day about the big breath, as I describe it, of the universe. It didn't begin as a big bang. It wasn't big, of course, we know that, but it wasn't a bang. It was ordered then, and it is ordered now. It was purposeful then, it is purposeful now. Was meaningful then, it is meaningful now. And this meaning and purpose is not to give us a hard time. I mean, the hard time is we're giving it to ourselves because of our unwillingness to remember that we are inseparable members of this community, these vast communities of life that is our universe. So as you say, Pam, if we can let go, and what else can we do? And perhaps appreciate that we are loved. We are loved, and we have so much help from all the multidimensionality and the sentience, both of our planetary home and the universe. What amazing adventure awaits us. And when we realize that we truly are spiritual beings having a human experience, you know, that fear of dying is eased, and we recognize the privilege of being here, but we also recognize that it is for a short time only. So what a privilege it is. And at this time, with all of us being here and now together, what a privilege it is to be fellow companions on this journey.
And I love, Jude, the way you talk about evolutionary impulse, because with your studies of cosmology and astrology, with my study of astrology, you realize that the universe is not random. It's absolutely not random. Everything has purpose, whether you're looking at an acorn that has all the information in it to grow into an oak tree, whether you're looking at a birth chart of a baby that you start to track over the years in terms of, you know, their dharma, what they're meant to become, their full potential, whichever living being you look at, living organism, it has evolutionary pattern and purpose. It is not random. If it was random, the cosmology wouldn't work, the astrology wouldn't work, nothing would work if it was random. And I think sometimes when we feel chaotic, if we watch the nightly news and we feel overwhelmed by chaos, well, just stop watching the nightly news, because there is such divine intelligence flowing through every living being. And that's what we're starting to connect with more and more and more. The trees, the plants, the birds, everything is just one flowing consciousness, I think.
Yes, and the mountains and the rivers and the archetypal logo of our planetary family. You know, this is what I love from very young age, the indigenous teachings defined life as everything in existence. You know, there wasn't that sort of boundary between biology, life, and non-life. Everything is an aspect, a wondrous aspect of a living, loving, and evolutionary universe.
Yeah. On that note, I'm going to take us into a short break. You're listening to Conversations Beyond the Cutting Edge. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and with me today to push the boundaries of what we think we know about who we are and our role in the universe are acclaimed astrologer and author Pam Gregory, and cosmologist, planetary healer, futurist, author, and co-founder of wholeworldview.org, Jude Currivan, PhD. Still to come, more on why April is such a huge month, what happens next, and activating the 8th chakra, the missing key to remembering who we are. Stay tuned.
Om Times TV.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of Om Times' flagship radio show, What Is Going On? And as an author, editor, and 13 times book judge who's read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors, I'm constantly asked what's really worth reading and what's not. So I created the No BS Spiritual Book Club to help you save time and money by picking the brains of discerning names who have walked this path before you. There's no catch, no fees, and no BS. Just an ever-growing library of 10 best spiritual book lists from some of your favourite authors and teachers, plus free book excerpts, audios and video interviews with people like Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., David G., Lee Harris, Mark Nepo and more. From well-known classics to hidden gems you've never heard of, it's the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to enlighten your journey of self-discovery. So why not join the club? Get inspired and save money at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Everything that we do, we can do in a contemplative manner. Through the art of contemplation, you can use the gene keys in a really powerful way. Gene keys is basically the code book of life. In the gene keys, the book is made up of these three levels: shadows, gifts, and siddhis. And the journey is through those three levels, kind of unpicking of the shadow states, the releasing of the gifts, and then the embodying of this higher consciousness called the siddhi. And the siddhis are very exalted words. And it's not like we kind of suddenly are all these exalted Christ-like beings, but we have flashes and illuminations along the journey. And the more we get stuck into the journey, the more illumination comes to us, because the more we're releasing the light from in these codes inside our DNA. So all those revelations are inside us. So the contemplative way is the inner way.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Pam and Jude, we've been talking a lot about what's going to be happening, following this eclipse, what it's going to be triggering. One of the things that you've talked about, both of you, is how we are going to have a greater understanding of our galactic citizenship. I'd like you both in turn to address that, because how is that going to show up? What are we going to be experiencing?
Pam, would you like to go first on this one?
No, over to you, because you wrote about this in your book Gaia, Jude. So you wrote about galactic lineage, and I'd love to hear more from you about how you felt about that, why you were led to write that.
Okay. Thanks, Pam. Well, absolutely. And more than the story of Gaia, when I go back many, many, many years to my own journeys of inner and outer discovery, of course, part of that was a sense of remembering my heritage, my lineage, and therefore all of our heritage and lineage. And it was very much this sense of we will come to a point, a time, where we will remember our human heritage, because so much is still unknown to us, our intraterrestrial heritage, which is our journey together with our planetary home Gaia, and our extraterrestrial heritage. And that is now opening up for us, it would seem to me, as part of this evolutionary shift that we are moving through and we're speaking to. And as an astronomer, as a cosmologist, of course, we've discovered over the last sort of 20 years, as Pam said, there's so much now opening up in terms of the discoveries within our solar family, out in the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud, these dwarf planets that are part of our solar family, and some of the most ancient and some of the most unchanged since the very birth of our planetary system. But if we go out, we're also part of a galactic family. And, what perhaps most people don't understand is that even before our planetary system was born 4.5 billion years ago, in interstellar clouds of gas and dust, molecular hydrogen, which had been birthed from the births and deaths of stars and their explosions in supernova, in these incredible clouds were beautiful chemical factories, literally birthing clouds, places, wombs of planets and planetary systems. But we now know that they also embody huge amounts of water ice and huge amounts of complex organic molecules. All that time, they were bringing the possibility of complex biological life to the threshold of its potential and possibility. and yet would need planetary systems beyond that, and especially water planets like our own beloved Gaia, to take that complex evolutionary journey further. But they were all there ready. And not just for our planetary system. We now know that there are probably more planets in our galaxy than stars. We know that there are vast numbers of planetary families like ours. We also know how special our planetary home is, at the perfect distance from our sun, for water to be liquid, for us to be a water planet, to nurture life. But we're finding more and more Earth-like planets through our galaxy. And our galaxy is only one of hundreds of billions of galaxies throughout our universe. So it seems that biological life, as part of that individuated, self-aware evolutionary journey of our entire universe, we're going to find more and more and more and more family members as we reach out into space. And for some of us, and myself included, I would suggest that they are already here in some way or other. They have made contact. I've spoken with many Indigenous elders for whom their communities naturally engage with extraterrestrial contact. It's in their story, it's in their lived lives.
Yeah.
And I've too had those experiences. So it seems to me that we're on this amazing threshold, that as we're able to wake up and remember who we really are, it's like the family are coming to a celebration. It's like all of the family has been invited back in all the multidimensionality of its vastness and its wonder to be part of this evolutionary journey and leap with us.
I think there are many, many people who have had similar experiences, and it takes somebody to trigger the opening for them to feel comfortable to admit that. Nancy Rebecca was the case in point with the blue beings. I mean, the number of people who responded to your video with her plan and saying, I've had those experiences. So people are now beginning to say, it's okay for me to acknowledge this.
Yeah.
And they might well have been keeping that quiet for decades, but you know, they've been seeing the blue light beings for a long time, and now Nancy Rebecca is talking about a whole new level of silver and diamond beings who are coming to her from the far, far edge of the universe. And so this is hugely exciting, and you know, it's really wonderful to hear Jude both explain the cosmology, but also with her own personal experiences, her own personal journeys. And I think it would be very arrogant for humanity, knowing the kind of complexity we have out there, that we think we're the only form of life in the universe. I mean, that's just crazy. You know, we're on this tiny speck on the arm of the Milky Way. So, but also many people I respect, such as Nancy Rebecca and many others, they channel Palladian beings or Arcturian beings or whatever with great wisdom and great love for humanity. So they already have gone through their evolution, it seems. They're quite a few steps ahead of us, but are holding our hands in this process that we are going through. Many people are now experiencing this kind of extraterrestrial contact in their dreams much more, these beings coming to them again with a great deal of love. So I think we're absolutely on the edge of that. It's starting to happen to a certain percentage of people, and I think that will become much more widespread as we move forward, and quite rapidly, actually. And how exciting will that be? That you have this sense of, gosh, I'm not on my own here battling with this, that, and the other. I have a whole family, a whole lineage behind me, which is so rich and caring. And so I think that's another wonderful part of what we're going to experience in the coming months and years, for sure. And actually starting in April, I would suggest, in a bigger way.
I'd agree. Sandie, just to add to that, what Pam was saying earlier, my own sense is that move of Saturn and Neptune into Aries is going to be a pivotal moment for that, potentially. Because that comes back to each and us as to how we perceive the nature of reality. So I think the more that we can lift up and link up and lift up together through these times, so people don't feel they're going through that on their own, but really understand that this is an invitation for all of us as a human family, as part of the families the vast families of a living universe. And there is that wonderful benevolence present and supportive of us at this time. I think this is so important for people to hear and listen and appreciate, and in their hearts, listen to this is so important.
And of course, with your, you talked about the 8th chakra becoming activated. So that is going to help people really wake up, really open up their consciousness to things that they may never have considered before. Tell us a little bit about that chakra.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I called it a chakra because at the time that I was being invited to write a book, chakras were the sort of the language that this would be sort of people would be more familiar with, because in terms of the sort of tradition of our consciousness field and our chakras, which goes back to ancient India, of course, there is this understanding that chakras are aspects of our overall awareness, our consciousness, as a selfhood, as a persona. And there are 7 major chakras that go from the root at the base of our spine all the way up to the crown of our head. But if we think about chakras and the 7-fold nature of chakras, then you think of an octave of music. An octave of music is not 7 notes, it's 8 notes. An octave of music, oct is 8. It begins with do and it ends with do, the higher do. But that higher note then opens up to higher levels of music, higher octaves of music. So many, many, many years ago, we don't have time for the detail today, but I became aware that I was finding midway between my heart and my throat, I was finding an essence that seemed to be opening. And I tell the story in 2 books that took place in the late 1990s into the early 2000s. And that was very much a journey of inner and outer discovery. But what it was discovering and experiencing was this activation of what I then called the 8th chakra. I now call the 8th chakra, or the universal heart, because it's this that's essentially that bridge between our personal sense of self and this expanded sense of me and we and all. We're not losing that sense of self. It's a completion and an invitation into that transcendental perspective of who we really are. So it's not floating away, as I'm sure neither Pam nor you, Sandie, would want us to be, but it's expanding our awareness to bring that expanded perception through our human experience. So that 8th chakra, or prefer to call it now the universal heart, midway between our heart and our throat, as it's opening, we're open to this profound evolutionary potential. And it's allied to the opening again, it's called a chakra, an altar major chakra at the base of our skull. And that particular aspect of that opening is opening our minds, our awareness to that transcendental understanding. So when we talk about multidimensionality and multidimensional communications, when the universal heart and the altar major chakra activate, which they are, in a very, very accelerated way within us, and I'd love to hear Pam's take on the astrology of this, that is the mechanism, as it were, of consciousness, of physiology and of consciousness that enables us to literally step into this expanded awareness of who we really are.
It's so interesting, Jude, because I know we touched on this in a prior conversation that I think was offline, and I was referring to Nancy Rebecca in our recent conversation, talking about this very rigid, solid white matter in our brains that's now, just in April, starting to open up and become much more flexible and starting to lead us into greater multidimensionality. And I really see this as the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, our physical bodies. So interesting because they're both to do with greater wisdom, really. Jupiter is to do with higher consciousness. Uranus is to do with higher mind, very much linked to the galactics, the beings out there. And whenever we have had powerful conjunctions, there have been discoveries about the out there. And with each important discovery, there has been a greater penetration of the out there than we had before because we have stronger telescopes, or because our consciousness is expanding, or for whatever, or a combination of those. So it's like an awakening, it's like a eureka, it's like a revelation that jumps us forwards, and we see from a higher perspective, and we suddenly see, gosh, I didn't see it like that before, but now all of this makes sense. I quoted in a video recently, if you're on a busy New York street at rush hour on the sidewalk and people are moving in all different directions, it feels overwhelming. But if you're flying at a higher perspective in a drone with slightly speeded up film, and you watch the pulsing of quiet times, busy times, quiet time, there's a perfect rhythm to it, a very predictable rhythm. So it's shifting our level of perception that all of a sudden opens up a different sense of reality and meaning, and that will inevitably link us back to our galactic heritage. I think that's just the beginning. April is the ignition point, the trigger point for everything that is to follow. And one big theme is the reconnection to our galactic heritage.
And I love what you say, because for me, this is heart, mind, and purpose. But the universal heart opens that connection through empathy, through compassion, through relationship. And the Alta Major then enables us to have that mindful perspective of what that's all about. But then the third aspect is that higher purpose that starts to infuse within us. It's like, what then? Now what? With this understanding, now what then? And this is the excitement for me. And I'm also excited because this started to be very real and experienced by myself nearly 30 years ago. So, for me now to sort of be in conversation in this way, to be at this wonderful moment of potential in this way is so great. I'm so grateful. I'm just so grateful.
Well, me too. We're all in it together. We all have our... And that's the Aquarian energy, isn't it? The Aquarian energy is getting a much clearer vision of your unique piece of the puzzle, your unique essence, your unique contribution. But how does it then fit into the whole? Just like like with Indigenous people, they had a clear role in their society, but they very much reference the community as their family. That was the extended family for them. And I think that's what we are going back to. And that's very exciting, because it will clarify our uniqueness in this world, and therefore our sense of purpose in this big evolutionary jump that we're going through.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about Lemuria, Pam, and that consciousness. And in fact, I had somebody call me just a few days ago to tell me that, I think you'd mentioned it in one of your videos, to tell me, how excited she was, because this is exactly what many of the new kids, especially the non-verbal population of the autistic community, are saying, that they have not been here since Lemurian times.
Oh, wow.
And they are back here because it's all about love. Yeah. Yes. And as you say, Jude, a revolution of love, which is a wonderful term. Wonderful term. Yeah. Let's all join the revolution.
Absolutely.
No, it's beautiful. And actually, just by chance, Sandie and Jude, somebody wrote to me this morning who is living on Hawaii, which is supposed to be the center for Lemuria originally, and he's carrying on the lineage of those people from way back. But from what I understand, Lemuria, when there was some great flood, it was a very large continent. Greg Braden talks about this. It was a very large continent. And they had to emigrate to higher places, as it were. That's my understanding anyway. So they emigrated to Easter Island and Mount Shasta and various geographies. But what seems to be important is certainly the frequency of Lemuria seems to be returning right now, possibly even the land. I don't know. But certainly I feel very identified with that kind of Lemurian vision, really, of how they lived their lives, which was just such a connection to oneness and animal life and plant life. And it was really exquisite. And it was very balanced between divine masculine, divine feminine, very balanced, in harmony with the earth, in harmony with nature. Everything had its right place, as it were. And so I can't wait. Yeah, the kids are incredibly gifted that are coming in now. That's wonderful to hear, Sandie.
It is, Sandie. It is. And when I wrote the 13th Step, which was one of those books that came out along with the 8th Chakra around those journeys around the world that took place from 1998 to 2006-7, the Lemurian story was very central to that.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to hear that the children are sort of remembering their heritage and their choice to be here again now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've got about 4 or 5 minutes, and there's so much on my list to talk about. We're not going to cover it all. Can you just say something very briefly about the significance of water and light? What are we going to be learning about these things that I think have a huge role to play? We're going to learn so much more about their significance.
Well, I can start, and I'd love to hear what Pam has to say on this. But you know, water is life for any biological organism. So when the universe began 13.8 billion years ago in its simplest of forms, hydrogen made up the majority of its very simplest atoms. The hydrogen in our bodies, the hydrogen in the waters in our bodies and the waters of Gaia is as old as the universe. It's a few minutes younger than the whole universe. So it has told the story of 13.8 billion years to this point. And the oxygen that conjoined with the hydrogen to form water was formed in stars billions upon billions of years ago. So by the time, as I mentioned, interstellar clouds of gas and dust were the harbingers of planetary systems, they were suffused with vast amounts of ice, of water ice. And when planets and our planetary systems were born, then the water was almost like a birthing gift to those planetary systems. You know, we know in our own solar family that there's probably water oceans beneath some of the ice crusts of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. There may be even some beneath the surface of Pluto. And of course, we began and are in a water planet, but Mars almost certainly started as a water planet, as did Venus. But we are the only planet in our solar system which is truly this green-blue dot that was able to nurture this complexity of life. So water has this universal history, her story, but beyond that, its structure, it's still mysterious. There is still more and more research now going on into the very structure of water, because it is extraordinary, and it allows for that complexity of biological life to thrive. The way it can flow, the way its ions are, the way even the ice is lighter than liquid water, which means that if you have ice, if things cool down and you have ice, you still have liquid water beneath that ice, able to nurture further biological life. The story of water is the story of our universe, the story of us. I'll stop there. There's so much more.
Do you want to add something in the 1 minute we have left?
Yeah, I mean, it's just beautiful to hear, because water holds memory, it holds information. So it's carrying not only that ancient information from billions of years ago, presumably, but also our connection to the galactic heritage as well.
All of it. All of it.
All of it. So water is the great connector between all forms of life. You know, the same water flows through people in Africa, or the trees, or the snails, or the moss. It's all, you know, we're all consuming the same water and passing it through us. So it's the great connector. And I love that Veda Austin in her work refers to it as God consciousness. Because if she takes, say, a sunflower seed and forms a crystal from the sunflower seed, the crystal she gets, the resultant crystal, is not the sunflower seed, it's the full blossom of the sunflower. So water isn't just a mirror, an echo. It has its own intelligence to read your optimum potential. And that is immensely exciting, I think, as a line of research.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So the big question is, what part can we all play in this revolution of love? And I know your answer, Jude, is cultivating a whole world view. Can you give us about 30 seconds on that?
I would even say simpler than that. Choose love. In every choice you make, in every thought you make, in every word you speak, choose love. Because this is the science of love. The whole worldview is a science of love. Our universe is not just a living and evolving universe, it's a loving universe.
Yeah, 100% agree with Jude there. Yeah, just be love. And I'm endlessly banging on about that message in my videos. Just be in love, not a pink, fluffy, romantic love, but love as a state of being, as Dr. David Hawkins described it.
Yeah.
That's high frequency.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you know, I thought 2 hours would be enough. It's nowhere near enough, but we have to end it here, unfortunately. So thank you very much, Jude Currivan. Thank you, Pam. It's been an absolute joy to be with you.
Loved it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been lovely to share.
Thank you, Sandie. Thank you, Pam. And thank you, everyone that's with us, because as you said, Pam, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
So
love to everybody.
You've been listening to a special preview edition of Conversations Beyond the Cutting Edge with cosmologist, planetary healer, futurist and author Jude Currivan and internationally renowned astrologer and author Pam Gregory. For more information about Jude Currivan's work, books and services to conscious evolution, you can visit judecurrivan.com and wholeworld-view.org. And you can, of course, find Pam's regular astrology commentaries on world events on her YouTube channel at Pam Gregory Astrology and her monthly newsletter, tutorials and best-selling books on her website at thenextstep.uk.com.
Yep, correct. Yeah.
Correct. That's it for this week. We'll be back with the second edition of Conversations Beyond the Cutting Edge on June the 4th. Thanks for being with us today. I'll see you then. Thank you, Pam.